This video is all about the 5 best ways to avoid losing your ass when buying a house. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. If you're a returning viewer, I appreciate your participation in our journey. And today I'm going to start by discussing the local market in which I live, because many things have changed within the market that I live in. And if you've watched me in the past, you know I've talked about there's a major difference between the macro market and the hyper-local markets that exist within it. And while the Florida housing market is extremely diverse and has been extremely resilient and strong, and most markets continue to appreciate, each and every Florida housing market is going to trade differently. So what's happening in my market is very unlikely to be happening in yours. But I am committed to telling you the truth about what's happening in each and every Florida housing market, as well as each and every national housing market that you want to know about, so that you are empowered with the truth and can make the best decisions for yourself, for your family, and for your financial bottom line. And the main reason I'm making this video is because I am working with some clients right now that are first-time home buyers, and they have waited and saved and rented for a long time in order to find their dream home, dream lifestyle, and they've done a tremendous amount of due diligence into each and every market that they were thinking about moving into. And to be totally transparent, these folks have done more research and more due diligence than anybody I've ever worked with. I mean, they've gone as far as pulling the site maps and found the lot allocations for different new communities that haven't even broken ground yet. And if you've been watching for a while, you know that I've shared that my job is never to convince anybody to buy or sell anything. My job is to give everyone the most current actionable information so that they can make the best decisions for themselves. And I'm fully aware that we've got mortgage interest rates on the uptick, pushing 8%, and there are all types of economic uncertainties that are plaguing the market right now. And because I respect your time, I'm not going to go into a deep dive as to what I believe all those risks inherent in the system are. I'll assume that you're aware of them, and I can certainly say the clients that I'm working with are absolutely 100% fully aware of all of the risks that are inherent in the system. And yet, because buying is right for them now, they're fully prepared to buy. But the question that they asked, and the reason I'm making this video and sharing it with you, is because I think it's critical everyone understand the top 5 ways to ensure you don't lose your ass when buying a home in Florida. And while some of this may seem like basic common sense, not everybody does the due diligence. Not everybody does the research as to what's happening outside of the little subdivision that they're thinking about moving to. They don't necessarily do the research as to what zoning or municipal changes are happening in the surrounding areas. They're completely oblivious to what might be happening in the future. So in addition to doing your research and due diligence on the home that you're thinking about buying, you also need to go a little bit wider and understand what risks are inherent in the surrounding areas, or if there are any risks whatsoever, because there might not be, up until there are. And I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig in this example, because when we first moved to West Boynton, when we first moved into Canyon Trails, everything around us was agricultural preserve. GL Homes, who at the time was selling these properties and owned the land, had developed and master planned this incredible community, which was intentionally built out to have resort style amenities and be incredibly lush, green, beautiful, tropical, and private. And in the early stages of the development of all of the different canyon communities, they had master planned the surrounding areas and built or intended to build many cool things that were very desirable features for living here. And so part of the reason that many people bought in the canyons outside of the incredible neighborhoods and homes was the fact that we had an elementary school, which was brand new and the best in the county, which you could walk to. And they built out the Canyon Town Center, which had a Publix and some pretty cool restaurants and stuff in it. But over time, the area has grown, and now there's a whole heck of a lot more opportunities for shopping, dining, and entertainment. And they've since built a new middle school, which is the best middle school in the county, as well as a brand new library, a brand new park, and plenty of opportunities for families to come in and max out South Florida living to the fullest. And despite whatever changes are happening economically or in other markets, the demand to live in these canyon communities is extremely strong. But when I first moved to Florida, I lived in Fort Lauderdale, and the community that I lived in was very similar to what I just described. And I experienced firsthand the city and the municipality and the area that I lived start to grow. And growth is normally a good thing, up until it's not. But over time, my dad realized that the area that we were living in was starting to become overcrowded, and it was starting to become different, and it started to become less desirable. And I think I've inherited the gift of being able to read the market in real time and understand what is likely to happen in the future, because my dad accurately predicted that the area that we lived in was on the downtick. And despite the fact that we had an incredible house with a massive lot that was on a canal that led to the ocean, we sold that home and moved to the next up and coming market, which happened to be in Coral Springs. And if I'm being totally transparent, I was still a kid. I was not particularly happy that I was being uprooted and we were moving to Coral Springs because, according to my dad, Coral Springs was the place for us to live. But that's what we did. And so we moved to Coral Springs. And at the time, my dad was right. Coral Springs was an incredible place to live. The school that I went to was a national school of excellence. In fact, almost all the schools in Coral Springs at that point in time were national schools of excellence. And the opportunities to max out South Florida living in Coral Springs at that point in time were phenomenal. There were all types of sports leagues. There were all types of families. There was every activity you could possibly want to do to enjoy growing up in Coral Springs. And despite much protest from me, off we went. We moved to Coral Springs, and my dad was right. But if we were to compare and contrast what the market was like then versus what it's like now, it's completely different. We were able to buy a brand new home, new construction in Coral Springs from a spec home builder, which was somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, $400,000. And back then, $400,000 got you an incredibly nice home, a brand new home. You heard me right, a brand new home for 400 grand. In today's market, you don't have a snowball shot in hell of getting a brand new home for 400 grand in my market. And while I certainly enjoyed my time in Coral Springs, it quickly became evident to my father that Coral Springs was starting to become saturated. It was starting to become very overpopulated. It was starting to grow by leaps and bounds. And it became obvious, again, to my dad, that Coral Springs was on the downtick. And fortunately, his business was on the uptick. So off we moved to Parkland. And at the time, when we moved into Cypress Head, Parkland was almost completely undeveloped. Holmberg Road wasn't even fully built out at that point. There was tremendous amounts of land. I had never seen so many trees in my life. Parkland was an incredible place to live and an incredible place to grow up. And Cypress Head was an incredible place to live. It's very similar to where I live now in terms of the fact that there were lots of families that lived in the community and lots of kids to play with and lots of activities to do. And the high school was brand new. Stoneman Douglas was the best high school in the county by leaps and bounds. It was an incredible experience, and I loved every minute of living in Parkland. But after I graduated and went to college, when I came back, I definitely couldn't afford to live in Parkland. And so I bounced around to many different markets within Broward and Palm Beach County as my career developed. And while I bought and sold many different homes over the course of the next decades, it wasn't until I got married and had kids that changed the lens in which I see through when buying a home or even considering where to live. But living in the Canyons communities, living in Canyon Trails, checked all the boxes. It had everything I could possibly want for myself, for my family, and for my financial bottom line. I felt like I found a secret market that nobody knew about, and we were thrilled to live there. But one of the selling features was the fact that we are living in this agricultural reserve, and the land surrounding us would never be changed. It was one of the benefits of living here. But just like everything else in life, everything changes. In fact, the only constant that I can guarantee is change. But the western portions of Boynton Beach and the western portions of Delray Beach have grown enormously, exponentially over the last few years. And many of the reasons that we loved living in Boynton Beach are starting to change. And I've got two eyes. I'm not blind. I see what's happening in real time, and I share about it here so that you know exactly what's happening in my market. And I appreciate you sticking with me to tell you this story, but I haven't forgot the purpose of this video, which of course is to know the 5 best ways to not lose your ass when buying a house. And I hope that I've covered the first way to not lose your ass by sharing you must be aware of what's happening and what's being developed in the surrounding areas around you. And just because the area around you might be currently preserved land, keep in mind at some point it won't be, especially here in South Florida, where land is scarce. And scarcity of resource will always drive up prices. But the preserved land, which was one of the features and benefits of living in my community, has over time either been swapped out and traded to build new things, or a developer paid off the municipality to such a high degree that the municipality would be stupid not to consider the offer. Which is a long way of getting to many of the areas surrounding my housing market are being developed, and I don't like the changes. But because I'm working with these clients who are buying their first home in a market about an hour north of me, in Palm Beach Gardens, I got to experience firsthand and see exactly what they're building and developing in Palm Beach Gardens. And while I have never once considered that I might want to move to Palm Beach Gardens, after experiencing it firsthand and seeing what they're building around it and the development and the infrastructure and the opportunity that exists out there, I shared with my client, I think I might want to live here. Because what they're building and what they're developing feels like what it used to feel like living here. And with interest rates at damn near 8% and trending higher, I know that there's opportunity now to get a home at a discount. I know there's opportunity because some of the builders in some of these markets are experiencing less demand. And I know that if it's right for me right now, I can go in and get a very significantly reduced mortgage interest rate from a builder who is in distress on their balance sheet for that particular quick delivery home. I can score a great deal right now. But truthfully, buying right now is not right for me today. But selling right now might be the right option today. And if you happen to be one of my neighbors and you happen to live in Canyon Trails, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm sharing it to prepare you. And while I don't know exactly what they're doing behind the community, I can't help but notice that they're doing a lot because I walk my dog behind the community regularly. And most people don't go behind the sound barrier. They don't walk the canal that's adjacent to the turnpike. They don't go into the other lots which bookend the community. But I do because my dog loves to run and play out there, and I can take him off the leash. But I've watched over the course of the last year them proceed to do lots of things that might make it possible for them to extend the easement and potentially create a road which could be used to service new communities, which in the future could very likely include workforce housing. And while I suspect many of the affluent people who live in the surrounding communities do not want that to happen, what they want and what they get are two very different things. And hope is not a balance sheet item. I deal in realities. And I'm going to pop in videos so that you can see exactly what I'm talking to. But there is a tremendous amount of land which surrounds my hyperlocal market, which I thought could never be developed, could never be turned into anything else. And today, I don't think that anymore. And while I don't know for certain what the outcome is going to be for that land, I do know that the massive parcel of land, which is north of 40 acres, has already been sold and is currently being developed into a senior living facility, which includes workforce housing. And I suspect when they start to break ground, the surrounding homes and the buyers who are thinking about buying in the community are probably going to pause a little bit longer when they see the massive construction. And while I don't want anybody's equity to get destroyed when that happens, it would be stupid of me not to know it's likely to occur. And if my hunch is right, and they do actually do something with the land on the other side of the community, well, you can bet your sweet pippy that there is going to be a material impact to the home values in the surrounding areas. And I think I pounded this enough, but the number one way to avoid losing your ass when buying a home in Florida is ensure you know everything you possibly can about what's happening, not only in your housing market and in your subdivision and on your home, but ensure you know what's happening around it. Make sure you know what the zoning and municipal risks are to the land which surrounds it. And the inconvenient truth is, no matter what due diligence you do, just know that it is subject to change. If there is agricultural or preserved land which surrounds your area, just know at some point it will be developed, and some opportunistic developer is going to seek the maximum value for that land. They're going to develop it to ensure they get the highest and best use out of it, because land is scarce in my market. And truthfully, land is scarce everywhere. Land is the only thing that you can't recreate. Which takes us to the number two thing to be aware of to ensure you don't lose your ass when buying a home. Ensure you understand what's happening in the financial markets, because the financial markets are the leading indicators as to what is likely going to happen in the housing market at some point in the future. But housing is lagging. So if the financial markets get decimated, please understand that the chances are that home values are likely to significantly depreciate over the next 5 years. So if there is a financial market crash and there is significant financial pain being felt by the consumer, just know that at some point in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, there is going to be a massive correction or a massive crash in home values. And please keep in mind, the last time the housing market crashed, it only took 10% of the overall national market to be in distress to bring down home values by 30% on a national level. There were plenty of other markets that got hit much worse than 30%, period. Which does not mean you should not buy a home, but it does mean you should be aware of what is likely to happen. And if you're trying to trade or time the market, please know it's a terrible idea, because nobody can do that. But if buying today is right for you, because you can afford to and you want to, well, then there's nothing to be afraid of and you won't lose your ass if you've got time. So the number three thing that you must be aware of when buying a home so you don't lose your ass is how long you will be in the home. And if your timeline is long term, you've got nothing to worry about. Because if you bought the house at an all-time high and the market went to zero tomorrow, what really changed about the house that checked all the boxes for being your dream home the day before? And the answer is nothing changed, which is a long way of saying set it and forget it. Don't even look at your home's value because it's irrelevant. If the market went to zero tomorrow, at some point in the future, 2, 5, 10, 15 years from now, your home, which you bought at an all-time high, which then went to zero, which again is impossible, will be trading at a new all-time high. Volatility in the market is nothing to be afraid of if you have a long-term timeline and can afford it. But life is for living and homes are for enjoyment. So if you can afford to do so now and want to, and it's right for you, then there's nothing to be afraid of and you won't lose your ass. But if you're terrified of what could happen in the future, what you will lose is time and enjoyment and life. Time is the most scarce thing we have. And while I hope everybody lives a long and happy, healthy life, I can think of 10 people right off the top of my head who I've been dealing with over the last few years who've been sitting on the fence, not living their life because they're waiting for the market to crash. And I hope they get what they want. But the reality of it is, I don't know that they're going to get the discount that they think they're going to because this market in Florida is so insulated and scarce. Which brings me to the number 4 reason that you must be aware of to not lose your ass when buying a home in Florida. Ensure that you have the property inspected. And if you're dealing with new construction, make sure you have that property inspected in multiple stages throughout the build-out process. Because if you wait till the last walkthrough, the final inspection, to have the property inspected, well, then you are at risk of builder defects and you won't be able to fix them because the house is already delivered. You don't want to be put in that position. So it's critical that you work with an inspector who watches them and holds them accountable throughout the process. And some builders are better than others, but I can tell you that there are some builders that will cut corners. They will not advocate for you. They will not deliver the right product. If they are in financial trouble, they're going to slap some lipstick on the pig and hope you don't notice. And if you do, they'll get to it when they get to it, which is not a position I want you to be in. Which takes us to the last item on our list, number 5. The biggest thing you must be aware of to ensure you don't lose your ass when buying a home in Florida is your finances. You must know and be fully confident in what your ability to pay is in the future when buying a home. You must granularly understand what you are committing to in terms of financial obligation. And if you're paying cash, that's great. You won't have the risks that are inherent if the bank owns your home and you're making a payment because you will have fully paid it off. But there are certainly other costs that must be factored in. You must be aware of what they are. You must understand what the taxes, the insurance, and what all the other financial requirements for housing upkeep is in order to fully understand what the true cost of ownership is. And if you have any fear, if you have any concern about what your financial capabilities are or how safe your income is, then you should not buy the home. And while that's number 5, maybe it should have been number 1. If you cannot afford to buy the home and you are operating from a place of fear of missing out, but you're really kind of stretching yourself and it's really not right for you, don't do it. Because if you do, you are at extreme risk of losing your ass when you buy a house. And I don't want anybody to ever lose their ass buying anything. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you found value, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, leave any comments you have down below. I'll get to them right away. Check out my next video because I suspect you'll love it a lot. And until next time, peace.